What's up, guys? So we're going to be doing another deep dive today, looking at an interesting Pokemon that I really was kind of excited to look into. At the beginning of the Tempest Cup, I really wanted to use this Pokemon just because I think he's got an interesting set of tools to work with. So let's actually look into our Pokemon today, Manectric. Yeah. Manectric. So, Manectric is actually going to be a pure electric Pokemon, maxing out with 15 IVs at 2340. I think Manectric actually would do really good in the Ultra League, seeing that he maxes out right under 1500. He can fully flex his stats pretty well. I think he would have a lot of success in certain cups inside of the Ultra League for sure. Now, you can achieve a 1500 CP Manectric at level 26 with a 0 on attack, 3 on defense, and 2 on stamina. Of course, that's not the only combination that'll get you there, but that's just the one that I found. He does rank 118th in bulk, and just to reiterate, I say this every video, but out of 160 participants in the Tempest Cup, being 118th is not a good position to be in. You are well below the halfway mark, and it's really going to be really a bad time for you if you're this far down the list. He does rank 114th in total stat product, which here again, out of 160 participants, 114th is well below the halfway point, and it's just really going to make him struggle. That means his stats aren't fully flexed for one, and he just doesn't have the stats to back up some of the other matchups and some of the other Pokemon that he's going to encounter. He actually does, at 1500 here, he actually does achieve a potential of 49.24, which basically just means that he's a little under halfway of his full potential stats. And to kind of reiterate what we just talked about with stat product, he's just not going to be able to really flex his full potential in this cup, which kind of makes him underwhelming. So moving on to his moves, Manectric actually has a decent toolbox to work with here. We have Charge Beam and Snarl as far as fast move goes. Charge Beam actually is going to be a stab move doing 3.67 energy per turn and a damage of 1.67 per turn. Snarl is going to be a dark type move, which of course means he does not get stab off of it, but it's going to be generating 3.33 energy with a 2.67 damage per turn respectively. Nothing to actually really complain about there. I mean, Charge Beam does really good energy and does decent damage for what it does. It's more about the energy with Charge Beam. Snarl does do a little bit more damage at the cost of a tiny bit less energy, but it's going to be neutral in this cup to a lot of different Pokemon. So that ends up making it a decent choice. If you want to use Snarl instead of Charge Beam, then you by all means can. You can build this to be a little bit more of a DPS rather than an energy gainer, but that's just completely up to your preference. My personal preference is I would definitely go with Charge Beam. In the charge move area, we do have Flame Burst, which is a fire type move, meaning we do not get stab. Costs 55 energy to fire, 70 damage, and a 1.27 damage per energy efficiency there. You also have Thunder, which of course is a electric move, which means you will get stab. 60 energy to fire, doing 100 damage with a 1.67 damage per energy ratio. Last, we have Wild Charge, which of course is a electric move, which means we will get stab, doing 50 energy to fire, 90 damage, and a 1.8 damage per energy ratio. So Wild Charge, of course, here is the MVP in my opinion. When we talked about Raichu, we talked a lot about how Wild Charge is the MVP electric move here, and it really does show that Manectric has a place in this meta simply because he has Wild Charge. If he had Flame Burst and a different electric move, I don't know if I would even consider him a possibility in this cup, but Wild Charge really does set him up to have a really good small toolbox to work with here. Personally, as far as move goes, I told you that I would personally choose Charge Beam as my fast move, and then I would definitely have Flame Burst and Wild Charge as my two charge moves, because the Flame Burst is really what even brings Manectric up today. The fact that he has a fire type move and he's a pure electric type Pokemon really does put him in an interesting position where he does have a little bit of use, which definitely warranted us talking about him today. So let's actually go over some positives and negatives for Manectric here. As always, we're going to start with the bad stuff, get it out of the way first. So the first negative thing that I have for Manectric is that he's just really flaky. The fact that he's going to be 118th in bulk and 114th in stat product really means that he doesn't have a whole lot of potential to hold his own, especially if you're going up against something that's going to be super effective towards Manectric. Any type of ground move is going to just really destroy Manectric here. But that's kind of a big drawback for me. I personally hate the fact that Manectric ended up being so flaky. In an Ultra League situation, I do think that he would be able to push a little bit more of his stats out there and he would be able to really shine and do what he's good at. The next negative thing that I actually have is actually talking about his bulk and his stat product here. He's just so low in terms of all of the possibilities in this cup. The fact that he's so low on the list really just it's a bad idea. I think Manectric really suffers here because of his base stats and how good he can be. Hindering him underneath that 1500 mark is really going to set him back quite a bit and make him an underperformer in my opinion. The next negative thing we have is that he actually loses most matchups, and this really stinks. If you go to pvpoke.com, you can actually do a battle simulation against the entire Tempest Cup and see how well that Pokemon that you're looking up actually does. Manectric actually loses to 36% of the cup. He actually ties with like 20% of the cup, and then he wins about 30% of the cup as well. So he either ties or loses most of the time, and that just really sucks. Manectric could have been such an interesting Pokemon, but inside of the stat package that he has, he really just doesn't have enough to bring him back. Whereas when we talked about Raichu, the fact that Raichu had a move that really just set him up for success, Manectric falls into a worse category in terms of stats than Raichu did, and he doesn't have a great fire move to really bring him back, unlike Raichu had the Brick Break move. The next negative thing, and actually the last negative thing that we have, is that Manectric actually loses in most mirror matches whenever you're talking like electric versus electric. So Manectric actually loses to Raichu, he loses to Plusle and Minun. He loses to almost all of the other electric type Pokemon out there. And it's just unfortunate because that puts him in a really terrible position that he's so low on the list. Manectric can't even hold his own against other electric typings. He doesn't have anything to go up against those electric types in terms of moves other than Flame Burst, and Flame Burst is just kind of an underwhelming move to begin with. So now, as far as our positives, I do actually consider the fact that he has Flame Burst and Wild Charge a positive. If you understand that Manectric has a place to really try to take out certain Pokemon, then you can really use it as an anti-meta in your area. In terms of widespread, I don't think Manectric has a great place in the meta, but if you drill it down and you know that certain matchups are going to be coming to your Tempest Cup, it may be worth looking into Manectric. The next positive thing that we actually have is that Manectric does really good against non-resistant flying types. So of course flying is going to be weak to electric as always, but anything that's just non-resistant to Manectric in general is actually a plus for Manectric. So things aren't... Pidgeot's not really like super meta, but it was one of the ones that pops up that Manectric does really good against. But the one that's more important is that Manectric actually does really good against Skarmory. The fact that Skarmory could possibly be running around with Steel Wing more than Air Slash, you're having a favorable matchup there because of Manectric's resistances. So I do think that Manectric going up against a Skarmory is a decent matchup. I don't think it's worth putting Manectric on a team just to take out Skarmory, though. That's just... no. The last positive thing that we actually have for Manectric is that he's actually ranked 8th He's tied with a couple of other Pokemon, but he is actually 8th in highest attack stat for this cup, which is crazy because, I mean, at level 26 with a 0 attack IV, his attack being ranked 8th is a big deal. That means he's actually pretty good at pushing out damage. It's just that, as I said in the beginning of our negative section, he's really flaky. So while he'll actually pack quite of a punch, he's just going to fall kind of easily. So you kind of have to be able to play around that. Now, in terms of matchups, of course, for all of these deep dives, I've been putting up all of the Pokemon against the bulkiest Pokemon in the league. And our top 10 bulkiest Pokemon, this is rough. So Manectric actually loses to Steelix, Tropius, Jumpluff, Altaria, Claydol, Regice, and Lantern. So he actually loses to 7 out of 10 of the bulkiest Pokemon in the Tempest Cup. 7 out of 10. The ones that he does win against, though, Lugia, Dugong, and Lapras, those are kind of important. Lugia, I don't think you'll see too much of, but Lapras and Dugong can be a big threat. The only issue with those is that they're really preferred, and kind of people don't typically use them unless they have the legacy moves on them. But those two are really the only meta relevant matches that you're actually going to go up against, and being that you only win those 2 out of the top 10 kind of sets you up for a rough ride, in my opinion. In terms of Manectric, if you were going to use Manectric, I would say he's probably going to fall into the same category as Raichu. I think that he would be a really good opener and a really good mid, and you really should focus on shield busting here, because he doesn't have any hard-hitting moves other than Thunder, but Thunder's really not going to be affected by anything other than flying types. And in terms of the meta, only being able to take out Lugia, Dugong, and Lapras is really going to set you behind if you focus more on damage than you do shield busting. So I definitely think that Manectric should be a lead or a mid, and you should focus on shield busting if you're going to use him. Do I recommend Manectric? Unfortunately, no. I think he's going to be a steeper investment than a Raichu, and I think Raichu does way, way better. I think you should really focus more on a Raichu than you should on a Manectric. I don't think Manectric is going to be seen very much in the meta, and if it does, it's going to have a really hard time clawing its way up to the top and winning you some matches. It's just my opinion. I'd like to know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about Manectric in the comments below. And if you guys are looking for Pokemon for me to do a deep dive on, if you have some Pokemon that you just really need to know more about, let me know. Let me know down in the comments below, and I'm going to be doing these deep dives all month long for the Tempest Cup, and I'd love to hear what you guys want. I have a huge list that I'm already working my way through, and I really like to do these videos, so any suggestions that you guys have, please make sure you let me know. So if you like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you have to say down in the comments below. That's all I have for today, guys. Thank you again, and I will catch you in the next video.